Broken Arrow is finally out and it is being played by hundreds of thousands of players, which is a major step forward for the RTS genre even if it has no base building. It does, however, have a fantastic army builder and customization system for which I will show you some tricks, but let's start with some more explosive tips first. Annihilating an enemy stronghold and all nearby units with a tactical nuke is probably one of the most satisfying gameplay moments in Broken Arrow, and it is definitely visually stunning. But knowing when and how to deliver this nuclear strike is very important because the cost of the missile and its launch vehicle is usually around 1000 points, which is prohibitively expensive, especially in a 5v5 multiplayer match. Also, the potential for friendly fire is massive, and I learned that the hard way in this match as I was playing with the Russian faction, and while my teammate was sieging a capture point the enemy team had captured and fortified with lots of units, I dropped a nuke which destroyed several of his own units. This is a mistake you can avoid, but you have to keep your eyes on the spot you want to nuke, as units can move very fast and get into the range of the explosion. On the other hand, if you fly your plane carrying the nuke too close to the targeted area without already giving it an order to drop it, it might get shot down and you just wasted 1000 points. So here are a few rules when using a plane to drop a nuke on your enemies. 1. Check the map for enemy long-range missile anti-air units. 2. Pick a targeted area that has no friendly forces attacking it. 3. Don't target an area and forget the nuke, but fire it as you approach the target. 4. Use the nuke to clear a capture point and immediately take it over once it has been sterilized with nuclear fire. And even if you end up missing everything, wasting 1000 points on hitting empty buildings, at least the game will reward you with a fun achievement. Now, on the subject of capturing points, you should know that capture points themselves don't generate resources but victory points. These points can also be gained by destroying enemy units, so in Broken Arrow you win by a synergy of capping capture points at the end of each phase of the match and by destroying as many enemy units as you can to score more victory points than your enemy by the end of the match. You can also win if your team captures and holds all the capture points on the map for 2 minutes, but that is quite rare. Since only land units can capture points for your team, you have to use infantry or armored units for this task. Infantry has the benefit of being able to garrison buildings inside of capture points and fire out of every side of these buildings, while vehicles end up having their view blocked most of the time inside urban maps and so are far less useful for this task. It is a lot more difficult to dislodge an enemy from a capture point than to defend it, so players usually rush capture points with fast vehicles or transport helicopters and drop infantry directly into buildings to capture these points. A few brave players might even use paratroopers from massive transport planes, but that ends in getting them blown up by enemy long-range missile anti-air systems. If you have to clear an enemy capture point and their infantry from buildings, it is best to use short-range mortars or long-range artillery units and blast those buildings apart, as your vehicles and infantry would not be able to survive against entrenched enemy units for long. The only other option, beyond the nuclear one I already showed, is to cover the approach of your own close-quarter combat infantry with smoke grenades or mortars dropping smoke all over the attack area. Next subject I need to give you some tips about is air combat. This one is hard and requires a lot more micromanagement than it might seem if you want to get good use out of points you invest into fighter jets or bombers. At the start of a match, your highest gain from jets will be taking out enemy helicopters transporting infantry on their way to capture points. since your plane will be traveling low to attack these, and if you add in the use of afterburners and flares, there is very low chance your jet will be taken down by enemy anti-air missiles. Hopefully, you can make your jet use an angle of attack that takes it to the middle of the map after a successful strafing run at an enemy helicopter. But this low altitude during a strafing run can also end in your jet striking the ground and crashing. So make sure to turn off those afterburners so the jet can actually maneuver. However, if you let your jet continue its forward flight and end up on the enemy side of the map, it will be very vulnerable once it tries to regain altitude. In most matches, flying over the enemy side of the map or close to their reinforcement points means certain death to your plane and pilots. As for bombers, getting them into range to drop dumb bombs is really hard, as most players prepare good anti-air defenses, which means most of the time your bombers will get shot down even before they get to their targets or immediately after dropping bombs. This is why most players use bomber aircraft equipped with cruise missiles, as these have the highest range, keeping the aircraft outside of combat, but at the disadvantage that enemy missiles can intercept these cruise missiles. These can be smaller bombers with less payload or large ones with over a dozen cruise missiles. Again, you do have to babysit them so they don't travel into enemy anti-air range. Now, before I give you a tip on army building, unit customization and points management, let me show you a fantastic call to action animation one of my viewers made for me and ask you to like this video and subscribe to my channel for more strategy game content. This tip is very simple, but it might not be very obvious to you. Because as you are creating a new custom army or editing an older one, you don't have to stop at the written out maximum number of points for any army unit type. You are allowed to go over this number for about 10% as long as the point numbers are orange. If they turn red, this means you have overdone it. What this allows you to do, as long as you keep the numbers in the orange, is to spend less points in, for example, infantry or support vehicles, and use those points instead to make your helicopters or aircraft just a bit stronger with a better weapon system or an extra ECM component. Just make sure your total amount of spent points doesn't go over 10,000 or you won't be able to use that army. Next, I want to talk about the true glass cannons of Broken Arrow, attack helicopters. Depending on your handling of them in combat, you can go from wasting 300 points to destroying enemy vehicles worth thousands of points with a single attack helicopter. Their main offensive weapons are mid-range missiles, rockets and guns, each with a corresponding enemy they are best used against. So, if you equip an attack helicopter like the longbow with a bunch of mid-range missiles, make sure not to fly close to any enemy anti-air systems and flank an enemy armored group. You can then snipe each and every one of them, destroying 3 times the points this helicopter cost you to deploy. On the other hand, if you make the mistake of using your helicopters as frontline attackers to go after enemies in forests or buildings with rockets and guns, you will quickly learn why I call them glass cannons, and waste all these points in seconds with little to no effect. Catching infantry in the open is a whole other story, and here your helicopters will do their job and annihilate such exposed enemy units with ease. An attack run with your helicopters, which are mainly equipped with rockets, is most useful if you go around the edge of the map and come up behind enemy anti-air launchers or artillery and other long-range vehicle platforms, and blow them up together with their supply points sky high. Helicopter-on-helicopter action is hit and miss, quite literally, as their anti-air rockets can be made to miss by use of ECM and flares. If an enemy flies a bunch of helicopters in tight formation, they benefit even more from these defensive systems. Gun pods, especially on helicopters with high HP, and if they get into range, can be used to shred other helicopters. Now, to directly tie in this next tip with the one about attack helicopters, let's just watch what a difference a single dedicated vehicle-based anti-air system can make when attacking with an armored fist into enemy territory. On this map, I was controlling a large stretch of the map between a capture point and the edge of the map, which is a prime place for enemies to try and outflank my team. So it was no surprise my opponent on this map tried several times to send large armored forces to get behind our front line. In one such instance, he had no dedicated anti-air vehicle in that grouping, and as you can expect, a lone attack helicopter armed with mid-range high explosive missiles was able to keep targeting and destroying these vehicles one by one. Only the use of the limited smoke ability was able to stop the incoming missiles from targeting them. Now let's compare that situation with how much of a difference a single AA vehicle can make in a similar situation. Here the enemy is once again attacking with different vehicles, none of which can attack an attack helicopter at medium range, and they are totally exposed here in open fields and roads at the edge of the map. What the enemy player did bring was a single AA vehicle, but he left it far behind, and at such a long range, it didn't have the impact necessary to protect these tanks and armored vehicles. At the end of this spectrum is using our short-range attack helicopter against the same enemy vehicle combo, but this time the anti-air vehicle is closely guarding all of them. Since the Apache helicopter didn't have missiles, just rockets, it needed to come in very close to its targets, and that made it an easy target for an enemy anti-air vehicle with its medium-range anti-air missiles. For this next tip, I will talk about and show you the use of smoke grenades and smoke screens. Just like helicopters and jets have flares to avoid enemy attacks, so do vehicles and infantry have smoke grenades, while some artillery units can fire off whole salvos of smoke shells to create smoke curtains to cover your advance or withdrawal. In a situation where your armor is advancing towards enemy positions, using smoke can help you avoid being seen as you get in close, or if you run into a superior force and you want to back off or change your attack vector. This is especially easy in urban environments, where deploying smoke in between buildings gives you a lot of room to maneuver and keep your enemy guessing which way you went. If you are preparing an attack on an enemy capture point and want to take it over with infantry and vehicles, you can use vehicles equipped with mortars to fire off whole smoke screens and block the view of defenders, allowing your attackers to get much closer in before combat starts. In case of running into an ambush, be that in an urban environment or a rural one, smoke will often let you escape close-range enemy anti-tank weapons or give you just enough time to move into a forest yourself. When your own infantry is being targeted and you want to run away or change positions, deploying smoke will let that unit have much higher survivability as it sprints towards a new cover position. When in a situation where you have to capture a point that has very little cover for any units, ordering a massive smoke screen to be deployed by your mortar or artillery units can help you even capture a point as long as you can keep covering your attacking units with enough smoke. Do keep in mind that units inside the smoke also have reduced visibility, so they can't shoot out of the smoke to attack enemies. This is something you can use against enemy units and drop a lot of smoke right on them to prevent them from being able to fire at you while you drop artillery shells or missiles on top of them. When it comes to unit customization, a tip you will probably find useful in your future matches in Broken Arrow is specializing your units for different tasks. For example, some vehicles can carry several types of different weapons, primarily helicopters and jet aircraft. Now, you might be tempted to gear them as all-around combat specialists with anti-air, anti-armor and anti-infantry weapons, but my advice is that you don't. Because battlefields are very hectic, and having a weapon system that can do a lot of jobs, but none of them well, is just an expensive waste of points. You will need a lot of micromanagement to manage to use a multi-role unit, and the ammo is spent so fast that you will have a problem doing enough damage against your target. So my suggestion is that you outfit your units as specialists. Be that a longbow helicopter with medium-range missiles for tank and APC busting, a Comanche helicopter with anti-air missiles for destroying enemy attack or transport helicopters, or a jet fighter with anti-radar missiles which will lock into enemy AA vehicles when they turn on their radars and destroy them across the map. I might have kept this tip for the last part of the video, but it is one of the most crucial ones. Scouting is as useful as ambushing. These two concepts are so intertwined that mastering one will let you both master and defend against the other. Basically, all units have a range at which they can spot and keep an eye on enemy units. And so do all units have a stealth rating, meaning by how much closer does an enemy unit needs to be to spot them. Forests play a key role here as they double a unit's stealth rating and make it harder to detect. This is why most players use forests to both keep units at the front to scout the enemy's position and to ambush enemies as they approach some part of the map. Infantry is best suited for ambushing, while drones and other air units have the longest range of sight. Do keep in mind, urban areas can be used for setting up ambushes just like forests, because it's hard to have long range of sight when you have hundreds of buildings interrupting your view from a ground vehicle's perspective. Some practical tips here are to advance by hopping between forested areas. Keep your infantry or APCs with anti-vehicle missiles spaced out in between forests to notice such hidden advances. Don't fly your helicopters over forests you don't know are clear, but feel free to bombard forests you see artillery weapon trails coming out of. Most importantly, never run a bunch of infantry units all bunched up in the open, as you will get trashed just like this by a single enemy unit. Now let's finish off this video with some important tips and tricks on artillery, long-range combat and supplying ammunition. First of all, always make sure to add a cargo vehicle in your support section when building a new army deck, because if you don't have a vehicle capable of cargo transport, you can't bring supplies onto the battlefield. Faster vehicles with more cargo capacity will of course cost more points. Second, keep in mind that artillery units are basically sitting ducks, which show their position to the enemy every time they fire due to shell and missile trails of their weapon systems. This requires you to keep moving them between different forested areas after they fire a few shots, otherwise you are inviting enemy counter-artillery fire to rain down on them and they will blow up from a single hit. Third, the artillery units, especially ones with the most powerful and longest range weapon systems, have the lowest capacity for ammunition. So you will often find yourself in a situation where they have exhausted their ammunition in 1 or 2 strikes. This means you have to constantly rotate cargo vehicles and send in new ones with extra supplies while sending those that are empty back to base. You can pack up supplies back into a cargo vehicle and move them to another location along with your artillery units. It is even possible to pack up friendly supplies and to capture enemy supplies. Artillery duels are really tough as they require a lot of micromanagement to win them. You have to keep moving not just your artillery units, but also their supplies. You have to scout the enemy with some type of unit to get accurate targeting data, or go by the visual signs like weapon trails. You have to react quickly and use map markers to be able to track positions of enemy launchers. And of course, you have to protect against quick attack helicopters, which can sneak into your line from the edge of the map and destroy everything in seconds. I hope you found all these tips and tricks useful and will be able to improve your ELO rating in the multiplayer or give the AI a faster trashing in the single player of Broken Arrow. Feel free to share your own tips, and if you want to see more new and upcoming RTS games, check out the cards on the screen or links in the description. Thank you for watching and happy gaming!